Hey guys, welcome to an all new episode of a pro wrestling podcast with Matt and friends. I am your host, Matt Kozakowski, and alongside me today is a true legend in wrestling to me, Charlie Haas. Charlie, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this opportunity, man. I really do.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on and doing this with me because like I said, it truly means a lot to me. So
good. Let's do it, man. Let's have fun and let's conquer this, man. Let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start basic. At what age did you start watching pro wrestling? When did you know, like, hey, this is what I want to do?
I started watching pro wrestling when I was probably 7 years old, 6, 7 years old. I remember this is going back, but the first match I saw on TV, this is right before cable took off. It was I saw Ray Crippler Stevens pile driving Superfly Jimmy Snuka on the hard cement, and him blood everywhere, and him doing the shaking the leg, the electric leg shake, and it was Captain Lou Albano as well, beating on Superfly Snuka because he refused to. He refused Lou Albano's invitation to be his manager, and he decided to go with Playboy Buddy Rogers instead. So it was that hooked me right then and there.
Is that when you knew like, hey, this is what I want to do?
Exactly. And I kept telling my parents I want to be a pro wrestler, and they were like, "You're nuts." And I would, me and my brother would do pro matches all over, over their king size bed, to where we broke the bed. And then, it's like we didn't have access to a wrestling room or a wrestling mat or even a wrestling ring at the time, not like where my boys, they don't understand how lucky they are. Like, I have access to a wrestling ring, and they can go into the wrestling ring and do and learn all this. So, back then you didn't even know how, there weren't wrestling schools. You didn't know how to become a wrestler. Really, the only way you back then was, you hung around the ring crew, you got invited, and there weren't wrestling schools. You were, the territories were, your first wrestling lesson was, you would be in a ring with a wrestler that was on his way down, and, they would call it a marriage, or you'd be married to that person. And he would say, okay, just listen and don't say a word. And he'd tie up with you. He'd cut you off. He'd say, just listen. And then, it was basically your first wrestling lesson was your first match, and that's how you progressed. You learned, and then you would work your way up a pecking order. And there were no wrestling schools, so.
Oh, for sure, and it always helped. You had an amateur background a little bit too. Right. So you brought that to the ring yourself in your style. We all right. Seen it, which is something we'll have get into as we go down the road here. Now, your brother, Russ, he wanted to start wrestling probably around the same time you did. I take it, right?
He was 2 years younger, and he was along for the ride, and he definitely wanted to. He was more into the WWF era, and he liked watching WWF better. Where I was really, I loved watching all of the territories, but so I grew up really more. Just glued to WTBS 605 805, with watching world championship wrestling, not world class. But I was just hooked on Arnie Anderson and Ole Anderson and Tully Blanchard and Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and and just I was hooked on the WTBS, the Superstation, and my brother was hooked on WWF at the time, so.
Is that what you guys like? Was WWF always your guys' goal to get to?
Yeah. When we got out of college, there was only there's World Champion, there's WCW, there was WWF, and then ECW popped up. We were in Jersey. We were wrestled at Seton Hall, so that was in New Jersey, and we saw that there was a wrestling school for the House of Hardcore ran by Taz. That was out in Long Island, New York. We went out there, and it was like $3,500 each. And I was like, "Whoa, man, that's not that we just got out of college. There's no way I can afford that, up right. front." So I was bouncing down the shore, and then somebody told me, it's like, "Hey, Iron Mike Sharp," and I knew Iron Mike Sharp was from WWF. They said to go down there in Asbury Park, New Jersey, which was real close to where we were living. And, his was like $100 down, $20 a week. How can you beat that? So I was there for 9 to 10 months. And then, then I thought right away he'd get us booked with WWF. He's like, get you booked. He's like, hey, you gotta get yourself booked. And while you're at it, try to get me booked too, kid. So, that's a whole different, lesson in itself. Once you, a lot of people just take a couple of lessons and go around telling people they were trained by somebody or, and that, hey, you know what, I can wrestle, but I mean, it's a whole, I mean, yeah, you can take the lessons, but you got to really learn your craft, and you got to learn. I mean, you got to be a fan of the sport. I really think that a lot of the great wrestlers are those that were fans of the sport, and that know the moves. A lot of people come in, they're not sure what the moves are, and the moves may be the same moves, but the name or the terminology changes over time. So.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Now you and Russ got your kind of start in Jersey All Pro, right? Sort of.
Correct. All Pro, yeah.
You also wrestled in CZW, Combat Zone Wrestling. What was it like to win those tag titles with your brother?
It was great. And we also, and then we wrestled for ECWA, which was Jim Kettner's. He started the Super 8 tournament. Right. That was, and that's where we, Jersey All Pro and CZW really put us on the map for the independents. And then, Jim Kettner got wind of us. They brought us in. He polished us up, and that's where WWF noticed us. We're coming out of Jim Kettner's ECWA, which was in Delaware, which was great. You're all over the place in Jersey. It's so close. I mean, I could wrestle in Delaware, and then like 2 hours later, I'll be up in North Jersey. So.
Oh, for sure. And that's where you guys got your calls for dark matches for WWF, correct?
Correct. That's right. Exactly. Kevin Kelly saw us there, and he was working a program down there, and he had us come in and do dark matches. And then I think it's like our second dark match in Madison Square Garden. We got signed the next day in Pittsburgh. So
that's awesome, man. I remember watching, obviously when I started watching wrestling in 2003, I don't think YouTube was as popular back then, so you couldn't really go back and watch those matches. Now, obviously, you see them. You could go on YouTube and search the Haas brothers dark matches. Yeah. They're almost all there. You guys were a great team together. I mean, so the chemistry between brothers obviously is way different than having chemistry with a partner.
It's like I watch my kids. My sons, Russ and Chuck, and they're the same age. There's the same difference as my brother and I were, same age difference. And Russ being the oldest, Chuck being the youngest. And then, but the stuff they do, I mean, I'll bring them into the ring and they do stuff, and I'm like, man, they're more athletic than I could ever be. Than my brother, probably about as athletic as my brother, because they're into, I coach an amateur wrestling club, and I really encourage gymnastics at that young age because, they can't lift at that age, but to build strength and to be successful, gymnastics is a great way to, one, it gives you no fear. Two, it's a good way to strengthen your tendons and ligaments, especially with your shoulders, your legs, your core. And they're walking on their hands, doing backflips, standing backflips, back handsprings, round off, so back, and that's what my brother was very good at. So I was more of the just the amateur wrestler, pound and ground, and he was the acrobat. But when you mix it together, you have a really good athlete. So so I mean, to get back to, I watch what they do as brothers, and I mean, they're coming up with moves, and I mean, I want to steal that. I'm trying to incorporate all that toward the end of my career. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I see your posts about your kids wrestling each other, and they have a little bit of an amateur thing going on too right now, right?
Right. Yeah, you see the shirt I'm wearing. We just we're in Texas, Allen, Texas, and Allen, Texas. They just won their 12th straight title for high school state. We won our first women's state title, which is great, and then I coached the youth club, and we won the youth state this year. We're actually going to be, we're so dominating in Texas as wrestling, and our goal now is to be a national championship team. We produced a lot of Division I All-Americans, actually 2 national champions too. AJ Ferrari, who just won he wrestles for Oklahoma State now. He just won the national title as a true freshman, and then Bo Nickel, who wrestled at Penn State. He's won 3 Division I national titles, and he's looking to try to make the world team this year. So we're producing great wrestlers, and which is great because Texas is the only when you look at Texas for wrestling, there's not one university in the state of Texas that supports amateur wrestling. They don't have it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like it's a shame because you would think with Oklahoma State and OU being part of the Big 12, you would think Texas or Texas Tech or, TCU would have amateur wrestling, but they don't. They don't support it. So, it's what we've accomplished in Texas is a huge, step in the right direction for amateur wrestling. So now we just want to be a nationally ranked team and be the first national ranked team without university, supporting it. So.
Oh, for sure. And that's awesome. Congrats to all those kids, being 12-time champions. That's awesome.
Yeah. See the rings they have, like Coach Best, Jerry Best is the one that started the program. Him and I grew up in Oklahoma together, around the same age. And he was a 4-time state champion, 3-time national champion. And he did the blueprint for this. And I came in a little bit later after, I walked away from wrestling for a while and my kids were at the age. So I really was just, we're building the youth program and helping him, refurbish it and push, all the youth into our high school. So it's a really good program, and it's a great blueprint that he's put together. So
how long were you out of pro wrestling for?
Let's see. I broke my neck. Drew McIntyre gave me a no-handed DDT, and he didn't let go of it, and my neck was broke. I was out for a while until I was able to come back and get cleared. And then I just it's hard when you're coaching. With pro wrestling, there's no off season. With amateur wrestling, it runs from like October. Then you got freestyle Greco all the way till probably till the end of April, and it's and every weekend's a tournament, or a duel. So it's really hard to for both of them to coexist,
Right.
Especially if you're trying to be picked up by a major organization or federation, and for them to say, hey, I need off this, and this weekend, wrestling doesn't work that way because wrestling's work week is usually, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and your weekends are usually Tuesday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, however that works. So.
Oh, for sure. With all the promotions out there, I mean, it's very hard to take an off day now, especially. Now let's get back to the Haas brothers. Russ passed away unexpectedly of a heart attack. Was there any time that he came to you and said, I'm kind of feeling off? Like, was it just completely unexpected to you out of nowhere? Or?
Definitely completely unexpected. His last match was against John Cena. We were down at HWA for Les Thatcher, and John just got called up, but they had him wrestle the prototype, which was John Cena, and you can see this match, and it was a good match. And then I ended up doing a run in. Lance Cade jumped in, and I jumped in. It was a good match between the two. But it was right after that we drove back from. Because HWA they worked with OVW, and so we would use their OVW studio, and they would just put HWA banners up in front of OVW. And this is the old Danny Davis Arena before I got put down there after Russ died. And we would, so we would share that. But we drove back, and Russ was like, "Man, I don't feel good." I was like, and we had a dark match the next day with WWF, and he's like, "Man, I don't feel good. I just feel winded. I feel like he felt like he was getting the flu." And the next day he got up and he's like, man, he looked pale as a ghost, did not look good. I went ahead and went on to the dark match, told them that he went to the hospital, and then a little bit later he died. So yeah, it was a hard 99% blockage of his arteries. So it was tough, man. It was tough.
Yeah, that must have been really rough. I mean, especially because you guys were so close.
Yeah, so close. Yeah, he's your brother, your kid brother. You grew up with him. It's I look at Russ and Chuck playing, and they fight, and I'm like, man, you don't understand. Like you guys really have to, you got to tone it down because one day he may not be here, and you'll never be able to tell him you're sorry, So
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean that very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Sudden loss. He was early 30s, late 20s, right?
27 when he took
27. That yeah, I mean, you guys are so young, man. And honestly, I mean, that must have really sucked because I think you guys might have been right on the cusp of signing those contracts with WWF.
I mean, we signed, we signed we were Well, it was so. About 2 weeks before that, we were doing the dark match. We were signed under developmental. We were doing the dark matches. So they came in. So we got an idea. You're going to be Team Angle. Team Angle was going to consist of me and my brother, and then Shelton and Kurt. So it's going to be 4 of us, and that's what it was going to be. And Russ died, and that put it on hold for about a year, and they weren't sure what to do. And then they decided because like 2 months after Russ died, I blew my knee out, so my ACL, and I was out for a little bit, and probably a good 6 months. And then they shut HWA down when I just came back, and I thought I was going to get fired. They sent me to OVW, and then I was in great shape, picked up right where I left off, and then they signed me with Shelton. So it was because of the knee injury, but and Russ's death. But Team Angle was going to be probably a year earlier, and it would have consisted of us 4. So
that that's a cool story. I never knew that. I never knew it was going to be all 4 of you. Did you meet Shelton in developmental, or did you meet him outside of wrestling? How did that go about?
I met him. So Russ and I signed, and they signed Shelton and Brock. We actually were supposed to wrestle a dark match against each other. It was going to be Kurt. It was going to be Shelton and Brock versus the Haas brothers, Minnesota Stretching Crew versus the Haas brothers. And for some reason, someone messed up, and we weren't booked. They were alternating every other weekend with us too, and then they were going to bring us in, and they never. Someone forgot to book us or whatever. Or talent relations forgot to book us. So, but it wasn't anyone's fault. But no, I didn't really meet Shelton until we were at HWA, and then when I was at HWA, we would run across each other as we were coming in. And like using the OVW arena, as our HWA television show, and that's the only time I met him. And then when Russ died and they shut down HWA, I got sent down OVW, and that's when I really got to know Shelton.
So that's when you guys kind of clicked and became what you guys are today.
Yeah, we were just talking, and Jim. We always knew that we were supposed to be part of Team Angle, but then when Russ died, it kind of put everything on hold, and they brought him up. They didn't know what they were going to do, and then all of a sudden, it clicked. Jim Ross saw us together. He said, "Hey, we want to put Arnie Anderson's going to train you too," and he did. And Arnie Anderson, trained us for probably a good year. Like we were, and what I mean by being trained, it wasn't like we were in school being trained by Arnie Anderson. It was like we were on the road every weekend doing live events and doing dark matches, and we'd be the opening match of the live events. It would be Charlie, Haas, Shelton, Benjamin. They didn't call it. They just Charlie, Haas, Shelton, Benjamin, and we would wrestle. Whether it be Manaki and Tajiri or whoever. Sometimes it just depended on who it was. Bob Holly, Billy Gunn. It just depended on who they had us wrestling at the time. But
for sure.
And then we were the first one, and then we were there before. Arms like, just get there before the show starts, work with me, and then make sure you stay late. We did, and we would just work with him day in, day out for a good solid year. Just how to tag, when to tag, how to cut off the ring, how to work a body part, this and that. It worked, man.
Oh yeah, the whole Team Angle thing worked perfectly. Yeah. The chemistry between you, Shelton, and Kurt. I don't think. Back then there was that kind of chemistry between a group like that, and you guys had that. I remember watching you guys debut. I remember everything you guys did as Team Angle. Tell us what it was like to be on television in front of that big of a crowd for the first time ever.
It was, to be nervous, but to be ready. We were ready to go. I was doing this long enough, 5 years on the indies, and then, 2.5 years on in the developmental, and I hear people like, "Oh, I'm tired of being down the developmental." I think, when I got brought in the developmental, it was just, WCW wasn't bought yet, and neither was ECW. So I had to fight my way through not only that, but Russ dying and fighting my way through, all the WCW and ECW wrestlers that got, that were emerged or that were, absorbed by these bought outs, and having to fight through that talent, to get to the top, and these guys had TV time already and I didn't. So by the time Shelton and I were ready, we were ready to go. I mean, there was no holding us back. We knew there's, you can say, okay, I think we're ready, but we knew we were ready, and we knew that we were as good as anyone they put in the ring with us, because I mean, we just knew, especially with Arn Anderson's approval and Jerry Briscoe's approval, we knew it. So we were ready to go.
Oh, for sure. And I think the tag team of the world's greatest tag team, I think, was way ahead of its time. You guys just, the way you gelled, the way you guys worked any opponent, it was something special to see. Now I want to kind of revert a little back, because there was a question I was going to ask you. After Russ passed away, you changed your name to RC Haas.
Right.
Was that ever a plan to be called RC in WWE?
Yeah, it was, but then Paul Heyman came in and he's like, let's change it back to Charlie. Because when I think of RC, I think of RC Colo. And I was like, well, I want to do it because I honor my brother Russ and Charlie, RC Haas. And he's like, no, let's go back to Charlie. So, and Paul Heyman was our manager when he brought us in, and he was writing. So, I mean, wasn't going to argue with him. And, so I was able to honor him by just writing his name on my wrist tape and all that. So.
And I think a lot of people back then, because I was, I think 12 or 11, and I seen RC written on your wrist tape. And I believe I speak for not only myself, but fans back then. We had no idea what that stood for, because we didn't know. A lot of people, I even talked to pro wrestler JT Dunn a while back, and we were like the same thing. We didn't know pro wrestling existed outside of WWE, you know? So we didn't know your background. We didn't know anything like that. So to see RC on there, we weren't sure what that meant. And to know now exactly what that meant, I mean, obviously that's a very touching thing, to honor your brother in some way in the in-ring capacity. But yeah, man, I love that you honored him throughout your career with that. But yeah, back to Team Angle. You guys were 2-time tag team champions in WWE from 2002 to 2004. And then we've seen the split of World's Greatest Tag Team when Shelton went over to Raw. Was that something that was discussed like a month before or 2 months before that we're going to split you guys up?
We didn't know until they told us that day, like, we're splitting you guys up. We're like, whoa. I mean, it was, we didn't know. It was a shock, I mean, and unfortunately, I mean, Shelton will never say, because I mean, he's still up there, but I mean, Kurt and I have talked about it. Here's the thing is, at the time, SmackDown, we had Team Angle, and at the same time going over at Raw, you had Evolution. And there was 4 of them, 3 of us. We were gaining ground, and we were set up to fail, but it wasn't working. I mean, dude, with Kurt and Shelton and I mean, we were rocking, man. We were supposed to bring in a 4th member. We were looking at other people. And dude, I mean, I think it got to the point where it was like I think maybe Hunter was like, shit, man, these guys are really that good. So, then Kurt broke his neck, and that unfortunate, or it was broken. He had to have surgery. So it was a way to split us up. They wanted to bring him back as baby face, and they did. And so, then World's Greatest Tag Team was born. And then, I mean, we were really still that good. And they saw that, and they were like, well, so they split that up, and I think that was right at the very end when you saw the end of good tag team wrestling right there. Because they knew they were going with Eddie and Chavo. Knew they were going with Eddie. They knew they were going to go with where they were going with Chris Benoit for world champions. And they were like, Vince always, from what we heard, that he hated tag team wrestling because he always thought of it and looked at it as an extra expense on the road when he's overseas. And that's a shame because, one time, I mean, and I can go into different genres or different histories of wrestling with the different federations. When tag team wrestling was on fire, and you could headline our main event, a pay-per-view or whatever you wanted to call it at the time, with a tag team match. I mean, if you go down to the Georgia Championship or the Carolinas, I mean, look, the Ole, the Andersons, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, Fantastics, Fabulous Ones, Von Erichs, the Hector and Chavo Guerrero. I mean, you have tag team wrestling that was phenomenal. Then if you come up and right before we caught the tail end of it, you had New Age Outlaws, and you had the Hardys and the Edge and Christian and the Dudleys, and then the APA, and then you had, I mean, you could go on, and I'm just like, tag team wrestling meant something, and we caught the very end of it with the Guerreros and and us, and that was it, really.
Oh, for sure. Well, one of my favorite tag team matches actually is the Fatal 4-Way you guys had at, I believe, WrestleMania 19. It was you guys versus Los Guerreros versus Benoit and Rhino versus, if I'm not mistaken, the APA, maybe.
No, actually, it was just the Guerreros. It was a 3-way.
It was a 3-way.
Four-way was that was in Madison Square Garden. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was WrestleMania. It was with Scotty 2 Hotty and Rikishi, I think. But yeah, no, I get mistaken because it was so long ago, but it was still a fun match, man. And you guys came out victorious. Yeah. It was one of the matches that really made me a big fan of tag team wrestling. Tag team wrestling, I will say it once, I'll say it numerous times. Tag team wrestling is my favorite. Absolutely. Just because if you get it right, it's fantastic. It's something spectacular to watch. And like I said, world's greatest tag team, ahead of your time. You guys work so friggin' well together, man. Like, I can't even speak even more highly of you guys than I already can. I mean, I'm a big Charlie and Shelton fan. I mean, I got Shelton on a poster back here with the Hurt Business. I'm wearing Shelton's shirt. I honor you guys as much as possible. I was speaking to a tag team, which actually asked me to ask you a question. It's a tag team that's up and coming. Their name's TSF, Rosario Grillo and Hunter Knott. Shout out to you guys. They were talking about, Rosario was talking about how Los Guerreros was his favorite tag team. And I actually mentioned how you guys versus Los Guerreros was one of the best feuds and rivalries ever. And I mentioned how I thought you guys were one of the best. Absolutely. He asked me to ask you this question. Do you have any advice for up and coming tag teams that want to get to where you guys are?
No, it's I guess it depends on where you want to go. I mean, what's good about now with wrestling that there is so many. It's unfortunate with the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, people had to learn to cut the cords, and internet TV has gotten bigger than anyone ever thought it would happen. I did not believe. I was like, who's going to watch internet TV? That's all I watch. And if you go to Pluto TV, and and a lot of, I know other platforms such as Pluto, like whether Plex or Crackle, they're looking to expand into the wrestling world by putting channels on, or broadcasting other organizations. But go to Pluto, and you got MLW, you got Pro Wrestling Ultra, and you got AAA, and you got Ring of Honor, and you got Impact, and and then you go to YouTube TV, you got SWE, you got so much stuff going on. That and Ring of Reality of Wrestling with Booker T, and there's so many different places. Now you got to find those organizations that really want to contribute and want to showcase tag team wrestling. WWE doesn't do it anymore. I don't think AEW does it as well. It's a shame, because if they would let Arn Anderson run the tag team division, it'd be off the charts. And now, people are bringing back the 6-man world tag titles. I know Ring of Honor does. Now, Ring of Honor does a really good job with their tag team wrestling. A lot of it is, it's just that they're doing a really good job. And we were able to go from WWE to Ring of Honor when Jim Cornette was there, and Joe Koff just took it over from Kerry Sulkin. And we were able to showcase our talent, had some great matches with the Briscoes, All Night Express, the Kings of Wrestling. And, we really enjoyed it. I think, if you know your craft, you want to be different. And here's how you can be different. If you want to stick out. And this is how I'm going to open up a wrestling school here soon. And the difference between my wrestling school and other people's wrestling schools is I will show them how to wrestle individually, but I'm going to focus on tag team wrestling. Whether they're a tag team that they've been together but they just haven't made it yet, or they don't know what they're missing, they could come to me and I'll either, fix the bad habits or teach them from the beginning. But, I want my kids to be start as a tag team, and I'm teaching them the correct way. And I'm being taught the way that Arn Anderson, taught us, because I learned on the independents. And then when I got up with Arn, I didn't know shit, man. Sorry for I didn't know.
You're good, man.
You are with one of the best wrestling technicians ever when it comes to tag team wrestling. And Arn Anderson's like a second dad to and I mean, he is the man. And so is Jerry Briscoe, the Briscoe brothers. I mean, you guys got them, and they were telling you, okay, you got to cut the ring off. It's very simple. You cut the ring off, and you do not let them cross that middle line from neutral corner over to let them tag their partner. You don't get them anywhere near it. You work a body part. You capitalize on their weakness, and you render that limb useless, man. I mean, it's Arn would always say, would you go into Walmart and buy a 3-legged table? No, you wouldn't. And that's how you become a good tag team. So many, I watch the tag teams saying, and the heels are so worried about out wrestling or out shining the baby faces, or they're so worried about having more special moves or bigger moves. Man, when I say the greatest tag team of all time, I think of there's two: Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and then if you go on to really go back, and you got to really maybe see a couple of their matches on YouTube, and that would be Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson. And those are two of the greatest tag teams. But okay, let's go to where you can watch all of Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard's. You can't tell me, and I don't know one double team move that they ever did.
Yep.
There isn't. And the reason why is because they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They didn't give the fans what they wanted as a heel tag team, and they worked, and they made the baby faces work from underneath. They worked the body parts. They knew when they had to pop like popcorn, bump and feed, but they weren't worried about out wrestling or outshining or looking better than the babyface tag team. You think they cared what the Rock and Roll Express were doing, the head scissors and the flips and the whoop-de-doos and all that? Arn and Tully didn't care about that. They just knew that they had to keep them grounded and beat them until the crowd had enough, and then they let it go. And
for sure.
And that's the difference today that people don't do in tag team wrestling. Man, I look at these. It's a great tag team, the OMGs, man, really good. They just, and I go, man, they're like, what'd you think? I go, you guys are great, but you're trying to out wrestle the baby faces. Don't do it. Don't do it. Why? Don't give them what, that's what Shelton and I, we didn't give them what, everyone knew we were great wrestlers. We jammed it down their throats. All Americans, great wrestlers, but we never wrestled. we took apart the body parts, and we cheated, and we kicked ass, and we cheated. But they're like, well, why are you cheating if you're such great wrestlers? Well, that's the beauty of amateur. That's the beauty of pro wrestling. Why? And it's only cheating if you get caught. So it's a lost art. It really is, man. And that's what I'm looking forward to do, man. Is bringing but then you got to have the organization to build these tag teams, and then you got to have at least good 5 tag teams, 2 good heel teams, 3 good baby. You got to alternate. You got to keep them going. They all got to gel,
For sure.
That's it. So,
and I think the last real time that I fell in love with tag team wrestling was back when Paul London and Brian Kendrick were there. Where you guys were with them, and you had Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch, and I think that's when tag team wrestling that was when it actually ended for me. You still got tag teams out there that are really good.
But like you said, they don't have the promotion to push it. So
right, absolutely. And speaking of tag teams, I'm going to say this: there's a lot of wrestlers out there that are single that are thrown into tag teams just because they don't have anything to do with them. You were unfortunately were one of those wrestlers that were thrown in tag team after tag team. After Shelton left, you were paired up with Rico, which worked, I thought, fantastically. You're one of those wrestlers that when they threw you with somebody else, you made it work. I don't know what it was, but obviously you just had that factor, man. Tag team wrestling, you just knew fell in your veins and your blood that you were just good at. With whoever they partnered you with, you were going to make it work. The tag team with you and Rico, I thought was very underrated. It worked so well because you were a tweener, kind of like you weren't like fully face, but you weren't fully heel. You were just kind of like, I guess I'll be here. We're tag team champions. You made it work though. You guys, Miss Jackie, you guys just gelled so well. When Shelton and you split, was that the whole idea, is you to be teamed up with Rico, or how did that come about?
They were gonna, prior to that, I had a really good matches with Rob Van Dam, and we were kind of like thinking maybe a IC run or whatever, and then they had me wrestle with Rico, and that was just like, it wasn't so much, probably the easiest match I ever did. It wasn't really, there was no moves to it. It was all body language and like, like his character was, flamboyant. You're kind of like, I was skeeved out. I didn't want to do this. But it was the easiest match, and it was more character development. And it was so good. Pat Patterson goes, that was the funniest thing. Vince and I were thinking, what if we put the tag team titles on you and you guys had to run, and that was right after the match. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Next week, that's what they did.
Yeah. Because I remember that he was a surprise partner for you, and you were just like, the look on your face was like, crap. And then you guys ended up winning the titles, I believe, from Rikishi and Scotty, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It was more like and if you watch that match with Rikishi and Scotty, it was like, even Rikishi, like, well, what the hell? Like, when he was face, they pull me out and Rico's like, yeah, give me it. Come on, baby. Come on. He put lipstick on, and Rikishi was like, oh no. And he fucking, like, he slapped his ass, and Rico slapped it back on him, and he got up and Scotty, and he's like, no. So it was, and that's the thing is, like, Rico was great. He was, the dude's a real legitimate badass. He was a sheriff. He was a detective in Las Vegas. Very well, martial arts. And a lot of people didn't want to do that. Like, I know the Dudleys had not so much Devon, but Bubba did not like to wrestle us, and it was like he was not really. He just, I don't know if him and Rico had different. I don't know. He just wasn't really comfortable around that character, and because the Dudleys were like hardcore, we kick ass. If someone comes at us like that, we're gonna kick your ass, and he just was like, man, I just don't, so so there was some times where the matches were difficult, because people didn't want to, wrestle, against that character. So, and I felt for Rico at times for that. I really did.
Yeah, because I mean, he was another one ahead of his time. Worked really well with whatever gimmick he was given. Incredible in-ring competitor. I think very underrated as well. He just wasn't. What's that?
So he was, he was so into the character. He went down and picked Adrian Street's. Adrian Street had that very similar character back, with his wife. And it was back in the like Mid-South Wrestling. He was a television champion, very flamboyant, but a legit, like, Golden Glove boxer, badass. So Rico went and picked his brain and learned how to be, that character and make it work. So yeah, I mean, Rico, he adapted well to it, man, and he was all kind of like how I was. When I give you a character, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to fall on my ass. They're trying to see if I am. I'm going to go 100% in and, make it work. So.
Oh, absolutely. And, it was one of those things that kind of bummed me out, because after you guys lost the titles, it was kind of like you guys just dissolved. Yeah. Rico kind of, I think, got let go, if I'm not mistaken. You were kind of put into another tag team, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with Billy Gunn, or was it Bob Holly?
Bob Holly.
It was one of the two. I knew that because I know Billy and Bob were a tag team for a little bit too.
Bob was difficult to work with. I mean, it's just, we're friends and all that, but Bob made his, Bob would make his, he always wanted to be a badass, and he didn't want to, always thought he, I don't know. Hey, I'm not scared of Bob Holly. Never was. I mean, did I have a legit fucking amateur background? And, all fights end up on the ground. So that's where I win.
Right.
I didn't take a shit. I really didn't. And I was never going to go into anyways. And I think that's where we would work, and sometimes we wouldn't. And he'd get, Bob was like, oh, but it is what it is. We're friends now. If I see him, we say hi. We have that mutual respect. But Bob was a tough guy, and he got that. I guess that in the tough man, or the tough man contest that they did, that WWF had, and where Bart Gunn won it, and I think Bob had a couple of good matches in there. But it didn't work out. It was just, you had two alpha males. I wanted to go one way, he wanted to go the other. We tried to make it work out, but it was what it was. So,
Oh, absolutely. No, I get that, man, because Bob just kind of carries that look on him, even on TV, just like, I'm going to do my thing. We've all seen it, obviously. One of the last things you did in your first run in WWE was the love triangle between you, Jackie, and Dawn Marie. How did that come about, especially being with Jackie at that time in real life? How was that storyline pitched for you? Like, how did you feel? How was it,
I don't know. They wanted reality, and that's what they did. They went, reality. Vince likes marriages on TV and all that stuff. And I don't know. It just, I was able to. I met Jackie through wrestling. I met her. Thank God we have 4 beautiful kids, and it was. I don't know. I mean, it was. They pushed for it, and then then they wanted to break it up, and I just I don't know. It just and then right after we got married, they let us go the day we got back from our honeymoon. So so
that's rough, man.
Yeah, it is rough. So Johnny Ace, for better for worse. Maybe because I'm too vocal about the way it happened. Maybe that's why I'm not in their alumni Hall of Fame, or whatever they call it, the alumni.
Which is something we talked about right before we started. Is it's crazy to me because every so often I'll look, because rumor is like another wrestler gets let go. So you check the alumni page to see, is that true? And you're the only wrestler I've ever looked for on there every single time, just to say, is Charlie finally on this list? Because
I had a 10-year run. My brother and I were there for development. So a good 12 years, with WWE. And I came and get into the alumni. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, thing is, I can't lie. I mean, YouTube speaks for itself. People can say, "Oh, no, you didn't wrestle." Just go to YouTube. My kid's seen it. It's, I mean, they can't take away the championships that we had. They can't take away the memories. They can't take away. I mean, we were that good. And I don't know why. Maybe they overlooked. Maybe they're just like. Maybe just who knows why? Who knows?
Well, you see people who have only been in the company for like 2 months who get let go, and they're on that page, and it's like Charlie put in over a decade, man. Like it's insane to me because you have that history. You are a big part of tag team history when it comes to WWE. One of the top, what they call it, the top 50 tag teams in WWE. You and Shelton are on that list. Yeah. I mean, for me, you guys will always be in my top 5, hands down.
Yeah, I think we well deserve to be a top 50. I mean, if not top 25. I just, I don't know. I mean, does it bother me? I mean, I'm not going to say it doesn't, but it does. I mean, I would think they'd have more respect. But it is what it is. I mean, it is what it is. What can I do?
Well, like I said, Charlie, before we started, man, I've always appreciated what you did for that ring, inside and out, man. Incredible talent. Now, you told me just now that your release came off right after your honeymoon.
Right.
You wrestled back on the independence for a little bit. Tell us what it was like when you got the phone call saying, "Hey, we want to bring you back."
Well, they want to bring me back, and they wanted to do a deal against Shelton. And it was going to be like, we're going to go for that and the IC title. I mean, it was all the stuff they promised. And I was all right, this was because I want to come back and just, job out. So it was supposed to be be brought back with Shelton, not with Shelton, but against Shelton, which they did. They had me go over, and then it was going to be in the main of, I was going to compete with him in RVD and going for this IC title and run. And then it just, it got put to, it didn't work out that way. And that's, I don't know if that had a lot to do with Michael Hayes. He never was a really big fan of mine or Shelton's. He always pushed against us. Maybe because we actually wrestle, we're not his boys. We were more, Jerry Briscoe's boys, and Jim Ross's boys. That he's the one that signed us, and they like the amateur wrestling. And Michael Hayes, he looked more after the Hardys, Jeff and Matt, and we are good friends. I love the Hardys. And that's fine. But Michael Hayes, he has a lot to say when it comes to the writing and all that, and he was not big fans of ours. So he, he probably killed our careers a lot up there. So
yeah, I mean, I remember the day you came back, and I remember you were Shelton's surprise opponent, and when that music hit, man, the excitement that I had just to see you back on TV was awesome. It was probably the first time I ever felt that genuine about a return in WWE, because like I said, I mean, I'm not just trying to toot your horn because you're here and talking to me, but I was a big fan of yours. And I always will be. So seeing you come back on TV and seeing you pick up that win, it was one of my favorite moments. It was one of my favorite moments, even compared to when Shelton beat Triple H when he got drafted to Raw. It'll always be in one of my top 10 favorite moments of all time.
Yeah, it was. I appreciate it, and it was mine too. And I thought we were off and running to something really good, and unfortunately, it didn't work that way. So
well, we seen you get kind of paired with Viscera right off the bat in your return, and I think that was another underrated team. You kind of had that little love triangle with him, Viscera, and Lillian Garcia. And that was always a fun storyline. You've seen the little things between you guys on Heat and on Raw, built you guys into a tag team. It was very fun to watch. Yeah, very entertaining. What was that like when they told you were going to be paired with Viscera?
That was fine. And what I liked about being paired with Viscera was, we wrestled a lot of them. Man, we wrestled a lot of the top guys, man, like Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. So that was not something you maybe on TV you saw that once, but we did that a lot overseas, and it worked really well. And because of that, they requested to work us, and they loved, Ric Flair, loved working us. So did Shawn Michaels, so did Triple H. So, we would travel, like when we were overseas a lot, or even on the house shows, we'd come in and, they would get, they would consider it a night off because they were tagging and it was easier on their bodies. They were in main event, on TV, they were in main event spots doing singles. And so they, for me, I got to work with my icons, my heroes, and people I looked up to, but I was able to work, learn how to work with them, learn how, and with them, if you work them and you don't hurt them, or, and they don't feel you in the ring, then they're going to want to keep working with you. And that is what probably really, that was the benefit of working with them, was that it taught me how to really work. It taught me how to work at a top level and know that I can be at top level and compete with them, and have fun doing it. It just, you never got to see it on TV. But we had a good year run like that doing that with them, and it was I learned a lot from them. So.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we seen you get into the ring. I mean, especially when you guys had the world's greatest tag team reunion on Raw. I'm going to touch base on that in a second here, but you did get to come back and insert yourself into roles like that you got to be in the ring with top guys again. So it was always fun to see. Especially starting your career with Kurt Angle and then coming back to Raw and being in the ring, like you said, with guys like Shawn and Rick and Triple H. Honestly, it must have been really cool. When they talked to you guys, did they pull you guys into the ring and say, hey, we're teaming you and Shelton back up? Or was it something you guys wanted to do that you were like, hey, we're just doing it?
I think it was okay, hey, we're just doing it for the one time. I think it was against Crime Time. They wanted to bring us in or against them. And then when they heard the reaction from the crowd, I didn't think they realized how much World's Greatest Tag Team really touched a lot of people, or how over we really were. And when they heard it, even Michael Hayes goes, "Whoa, we didn't expect that,"
Yeah.
And they were, "How can we not do something with that?" And that's sort of a guy that's trying to bury you the whole time. It's like shit. So yeah, I mean, it was. We were. I mean, dude, like you said, man, we were legit, man. We were that damn good against anybody I put up there. And and I think when they heard the crowd reaction, like, holy shit, man, like we really we struck a note, to them, but we also we set, we set that, that impression on, the fans, for being together for such a short period of time. But what we did in the ring spoke louder than words. So.
Oh yeah, and you got to see. I mean, like I said a little earlier, is tag teams were just starting to fade away at that point. But you got to be in the ring with guys like Lance Kidd and Trevor Murdoch, who worked very well as a team, and Lennon and Kendrick, who were fantastic. Another team way ahead of their time. So that must have been cool, especially being in the ring against guys like the Hardys, who you said, were on one of the back burners of tag team division when you guys started coming in.
They're I mean, the Hardys are unbelievable. Love Matt, love Jeff. Really just good people. Because me and my brother were brought in, and there was a lot of like, hey, want to bring the Haas brothers up, do some of the Hardy boys. It never happened, but they were always pushing for us, but at the time they were pushing for us, that's when WCW and ECW got bought, and everything got merged in one, entity, and you're like fighting from the, you're trying to swim to the top looking for air with all this pool of talent, and you're trying to get through them and seeing who's going to last and who wasn't. It was, and I got to thank, a lot of people. I got to thank Jim Cornette, man. He took a chance on me after Russ died and after the shutdown HWA, he pitched to bring me in. And man, Jim Cornette, I got to say, I mean, if he ever watches this or does it, I mean, I owe a lot to him. I owe a lot to Jim Cornette, because he also was the one that brought us in the Ring of Honor too. So much love and respect to Jim Cornette.
And that's what we're actually going to get to in a second, is the Ring of Honor run. But after the World's Greatest Tag Team, after I believe Shelton got drafted again away from you, you started getting into this role of the impersonations. Was that something you were okay with, or was it just like, well, I mean, they pitched it? Or
I saw the writing on the wall, like they were trying to get rid of me, and I knew, they were looking for, he's got a bad attitude, doesn't want to do it. So man, I gave it everything I had, 100%. And they were like, shit, man, this kid, I would research it. They told me a week ahead of time who I was going to be. I'd research it, get all the wardrobe together, and I'd just go out and do the best I could, and it wasn't trying to make fun or bury anyone. I was trying to honor them,
Oh yeah.
Is it my greatest moment in wrestling? No, but you know what? I mean, you got to learn to make fun of yourself. So it is what it is. I mean, it was showing character development. It was Johnny Ace's idea. That was his character that he wanted, to get out there. So,
well, you've seen many guys do the impersonation gimmick after you, and you made it work very well. It was one of those things that whatever they gave you, you just made it work. We've seen you do impersonations of the great Khali, the great Charlie, John Cena, JBL. It worked so well.
I think the JBLs are my favorite. Yeah, I know my son Chuck. He will not. He'll watch that over and over, and he's like, CHL Charles Haas. I mean, Layfield, and I mean, he goes over and over and over. Every time I say something, he gets louder with him. Like, all right, enough. But yeah, but you know what? There was one time we thought maybe we do that CHL character would run, and I know Bradshaw pushed for it, but again, it got shut down. But they wanted to do maybe I'd be his sidekick or be his character, JBL. I always said he'd be like a boss hog, and I'd be like Dewey hog or whatever. I'd be the in shape boss hog, and he'd be the boss hog.
So you would have been the Mizdow to the Miz as Charlie Haas to JBL.
So yeah, something like that.
Did you watch WWE when Mizdow did the impersonation of Miz?
I did, man. I don't understand why they let him go either. I really don't.
I think it's one of those things where I don't think WWE really understands talent as much anymore. You got a guy like Shelton who has been he's been killing the game all day. Shelton, if he ever watches this, he's one of my top 5 of all time.
He's sick. I mean, and I know he's not vocal about it, but it hurts him. I mean, come on, man. He deserves a title run. It's bullshit. I mean, it really is. I mean, kid is so. He's not even a kid. He's my best friend. He was in my the best man at my wedding. He was the godfather of my goddaughter and my daughter. Godfather of my daughter. He's just like, man. It's just come on. Enough's enough. I mean, give the guy, God, give him a break, man. I mean, he's the better wrestler, and I love Bobby Lashley, great guy, but Shelton's a better wrestler. Why isn't Shelton there? Why?
Yeah. It was one of those things when he was the highlight reel of the Money in the Bank matches. Just completely blew it away. Shelton has always been on top of the game. Like you said, I mean, I love Bobby too, and I'll say the exact same thing. Shelton is way better.
Right. It's like you put them in a group together, and then you break them up. When they carried the business during the pandemic, they carried it. And then you job them out like they did to him and Cedric had to do a 2-on-1 handicap. And he's just, come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, Shelton Benjamin is a 2-time Division I All-American. Bobby Lashley was a Division II All-American. And I know because the guy that would beat Bobby was Keith Cunningham down at Central Oklahoma, a good friend of mine. Dude, and Bobby was like, man, I can never beat him. And I'm like, it's a big difference between Division II and Division I. And I mean, come on, man. I mean, Shelton deserves it. And I mean, he deserved it a long time ago before the Hurt business. But I mean, he deserves better than what they did to him. So
I think the time would have been is right when he got drafted to Raw, beating Triple H and how high and hot he was. We've seen him win the IC title from Jericho months later. It was one of those matches too that just highlight reel. Shelton has always been a highlight reel, and very, very heartbreaking, to see that too.
Frustrating.
So you guys got let go from WWE around probably the same time. Your second time getting let go, Shelton's first. Tell us what it was like when you guys jumped into Ring of Honor, how different the atmosphere is compared to WWE. And, you guys had legendary matches against the Briscoes and the Kings of Wrestling, and how different that atmosphere was compared to WWE.
Yeah. So the good thing was Jim Cornette was writing for him. Kevin Kelly called me. He's like, hey, Jim Cornette needs to talk to you. I'm like, all right. And he goes, whatever you guys do not sign anywhere in the next 2 months. I'm like, all right, why? And he's like, just don't. I can't talk about it, just don't. All right. So 2 months later, Jim calls, he goes, got an opportunity. We want to bring you and Shelton in to wrestle the Kings of Wrestling down in New York. All right. And what was it, the Hammerstein Ballroom? I can't remember where it was. It was unbelievable. And I knew Ring of Honor was like, I've watched Ring of Honor. It is how can I say, this is before it really, I mean, it was on fire. And a lot of and this is right, CM Punk was already brought up there. So they were, WWE was taking the talent from there. And our first match there, the night we wrestled Kings of Wrestling, is when Tyler Black was leaving. He dropped the title, and it was now, what do you call it? Tyler Black was
Seth Rollins.
Now Seth Rollins, correct. Thanks for that. And that was, and so we knew WWE was, they were listening to the internet. They were, because before that, Ring of Honor was like a cult following, man. It was like, it was really the first promotion that, that would listen to the internet and actually gave the fans what they wanted, and they let the fans actually interact, because for so long, WWF, and I can't speak for WCW, but I know ECW, actually probably ECW was before Ring of Honor. So, I mean, it was, but ECW had, okay, we're talking about tag teams, the Dudleys. You had Mustafa and New Jack, the Gangsters. Then you had Public Enemy. You had the Pit Bulls. I mean, here's another genre that they actually interacted with the crowd. And those tag teams were unbelievable as well. I mean, the Terminator, or what was it called, man? They had totally elimination, the Eliminators,
Yep.
or whatever. I mean,
John and Perry.
Yeah. That total elimination was the sickest move I've ever seen in my life. Unbelievable. No one can duplicate it. No, believe me, we all tried. We couldn't.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you. So that was a whole nother genre of tag teams. And then Ring of Honor, comes in after WCW gets bought out, and then here you come, and the ECW gets bought out, and Ring of Honor starts to make its way. And Ring of Honor was right there when they started with Jersey All Pro. They just were able to, they were the first ones like, okay, hey, I'm the ECW champ, but I can't go do jobs at other independents because I'm their champ. Like they took that and it meant something. So I think that's what started putting them above everything, above being an independent. Then they were like a high independent. Then they were like, they're number two. I mean, there was no one there at the time. So people were, where else were they going to pick their talent, from? So we were, Cornette went in there to start writing. Kerry Sulkin brought him in. And then he's like, yeah, man. He's like, well, in Jim's old school, he likes the old school tag teams. And he knew that we were training like that. And they had a hell of a tag team program going on. So he brought Shelton and I in. I think fans were excited to see it, but they also knew they were kind of, which is great because it fit perfect for us. We don't do what those tag teams could do.
Yeah.
We weren't trying those tag teams. We weren't trying to come up with these crazy super duper moves. It was perfect for us because it was like putting you'd be like, you'd get the same reaction, putting Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard in there at that time. And they are a workhorse tag team that's going to, like you said, you're going to capitalize on your opponent's weakness. You're going to render that limb useless till you beat them or submit them with it. And that's the way we were taught by Arn. And that's what we did. And people hated it because then they were like, you can't wrestle. Well, actually, we are wrestling. You guys are programmed to see all these, hooplas, and you're programmed more like a Circus Olay type of wrestling, or like a lucha libre style. And I'm sorry, not circus, more of a lucha libre style. And that's not us. We're ground and pound. We actually are wrestling. But since you guys don't want, since we're not allowing you to see us do what we, the acrobats, and we're actually wrestling, you hate us even more. So it's perfect. It was perfect.
Oh, yeah. Because you guys, like you said, bringing that old school style compared to, the flashiness, you guys are just kind of, simple.
Yeah, we cut off the ring. No one does that anymore. They didn't. And that was what was different. And that's what they loved about it, because we were cutting off the ring. We were doing shit that they hated to see, but it was the old school style, and that's what it was great. It was great. It was great at the time. So.
No, for sure. And then, you guys got to run with the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships, which was a fun time to see.
Yeah, we had. So, and people don't realize that the Briscoe brothers, my brother and I broke them in.
Okay.
WA for Jim Kettner, and they just started. They were good. Went through Jim Kettner's school of wrestling right down there, and we were their first match. We broke them in. They were just out of high school.
That's awesome.
Brothers versus the Briscoe brothers. Research it on YouTube. You'll see some run-ins. But yeah, we broke in the Briscoe brothers, and then they'll tell you Jay and
Mark.
Yeah, Mark's the younger one. Jay and Mark, they'll tell you, man. I mean, dude, the Haas brothers, we were on our way out, and they were just coming in. So yeah, we broke in the Briscoe Haas brothers versus Briscoe brothers, broke them in. So
that's awesome. I'll have to definitely check that out. I didn't know that. That's cool. That's a cool story. But yeah, I mean, Ring of Honor had those tag teams, man. The Briscoes, the All Night Express, World's Greatest Tag Team, the Kings of Wrestling. It obviously, compared to WWE, where they're more on the safe side, it must have been feeling different to be in a more competitive ring with all these other talents.
I felt appreciated, man. It felt great, man. It really did. And I can't thank Ring of Honor more. It felt good. God, I mean, the fans, they hated us, but man, it was fun, man. It was really good time. So,
well, you guys did change the landscape for the tag team division around that time too. And seeing a tag team that I grew up watching do their thing against teams who were killing the game, absolutely being fantastic at it, was always a fun time to see it. Now, what happened to the world's greatest tag team in Ring of Honor that you guys just kind of, because we seen you team with Rhett Titus a little bit.
So we knew we were Shelton got offered to go to Japan. You know, he wanted to make more money, and so we knew that was going to happen. We were there long enough, and I just, you know, Russ was just born. My son, actually Chuck was just born, so I wasn't going over to Japan. I wanted to stay local, wrestle, and so you know we were just so we decided to split. You know, it was just the way it was. You know, it's the way a lot of great tag teams do. They come back and forth. They come together. They split. They come back together. You know, so we never really had that blow off where we against each other. But man, we just you know, it just was you know, it was you know, it happened that way. So it went on to Japan, and because of that, you know, he ended up getting signed back with WWE. So
I remember it just kind of fading away, the world's greatest tag team yet again. And I didn't know that was the reason why. I never knew that, you know, so I always wanted to ask that question. Now, after Ring of Honor, is that when you took a break for wrestling?
Yeah, I took a break, and you know, started coaching. You know, started coaching amateur wrestling, and I was looking. You know, my body was, you know, I put a lot of time in, starting to get beat up, and then I just wanted to, you know, I spend more time with my family, my kids, my daughters, my sons. So
that's awesome, man. SWE, let's talk about that. Was that your first time back into pro wrestling as SWE, or were you in pro wrestling before that?
No, I was so I came back. I was working Texoma Pro, which is owned by Robert Langdon, really good friend of mine, great guy. I did a lot of independence for him and it was close by to where I was living. And he's like, "Hey, we want you come up. We want to honor you. We want to induct you into the Texoma Hall of Fame, Texoma Pro Hall of Fame." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And you know what's different about with Robert gives you, when they induct you, they give you a ring. You know, like WWE, how gives you those rings? He'll give you like your world title, all the world titles you won, like replicas of it. And you know, so everyone's like, man, they want to work for Robert because he actually takes care of the wrestlers. Even though it's a smaller platform, he takes care of them. So I came up there, and I brought my kids up there, and they gave me the ring, and then you know the titles that I won when I was up there, and so he's like, "Man, you look great. Why don't you come back to wrestling like that?" There's no way, man. I go, I haven't done this in like 3 years, you know, 4 years. I go, I'm done. And they're like, "No, just try it." You know, and I'm like, I knew I was in shape physically because I've been amateur wrestling. I've been wrestling down at you know, with the high school kids, college kids. So I knew that wasn't the problem. It's just your timing, you know, punches, my kicks, you know, bump and feed. My neck was broken. I didn't know if I was going to be able to bounce back. And then all of a sudden, man, I'm like, "All right, I'll do it. But here's what I want to do. I want to come in. I want to do it under a mask. I want to wear a mask. I want to be called the sickness. That way, if I fell and it doesn't work out, no harm done. They don't know who it is. I just go off in the." Well, it actually took off bigger than I thought it was going to be, and I was more of a heel, and then James Beard, who also helps run Texoma Pro, was also helping run SWE, and he goes, "Hey, you need to come down and see SWE." And Robert's like, "You should go down and check it out." So I went down there the next day, and it was close by. And I just wanted to show, you know, the kids were like, "Come on, Dad, let's go," you know. And I'm like, "All right." So I went down there, and I introduced a lot of WWF guys were there, and I just like introduced them to everybody, you know, because they never really saw me on TV growing up. They weren't even born yet when I was leaving WWF or when I was with WWE. And so they got, I met, you know, Tom Lance and Jason Jarrett, and you know, Teddy Long was there, Mark Henry, and they're like, "Hey, you know, you should try this out." I'm like, "Look, they're like, come on, you know, just we know you're doing the sickness thing up, you know, up there. So why don't you just come try it out?" I'm like, "All right." but they're like, we want you to be Charlie Haas. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I went down there. I did one match. I said, I'll do it, but I'm going to wrestle the way I want to, the way that I was told. I can't wrestle, but I'm going to do it my way. And so I did, and I'm a heel by heart, but I'm a heel when I'm me, Charlie Haas, the wrestler, the heel. I have a fifth gear that's just, I can't be stopped. And Kevin Sullivan was writing this. He saw it and he goes, we got to put the title on this kid, man. He goes, I haven't seen a gear like this since Paul Orndorff. He goes, this kid is, it's like, where has he been? And like he Kevin we never crossed paths before. And he was at WCW when they ended it, and WWF never really brought Kevin in to write for him. So this is the first time I got to meet Kevin Sullivan. I'm a huge fan of his, and I thank him for everything now. But he's like, holy shit, Charlie. He goes, you got something there. And then so it's me. And all it is, it's me being someone that Arn Anderson's always been, and that is, I wrestle. I go back and I work body part. No one does that anymore. No one works body parts. They want to out wrestle the baby face. They want to show that they do all these. Dude, I will look for the cheapest shot there is. I will take that cheap shot, and whatever that cheap shot is, whether it's going to be on an arm, a leg, a neck. Like the other day, I worked an eye. I worked the eye. No one worked. Name one match where you ever see a guy work the eye the whole match as a heel.
You can't.
But it makes sense. If you can't see, you can't wrestle. So every time the guy starts coming up, I go right back to his eye. You can't see. It's the most. I mean, it's fucking brilliant. It really is. I mean, I'm a genius.
Absolutely.
But no one's done that. No one has ever done that. So why not? Why not work the eyeball? Why not work the eyes? I mean, it's a body part. If you can't see, you can't wrestle. So
for sure.
It's like, so everyone's and I'll work the neck and I'll work the hand, I'll work the, but because of Fit Finley, he taught me a lot, man. That's, a 10-year run with WWE. I wasn't just sitting there hoping to get in. I was in the ring every day, whether they use me or not, working with Fit Finley, working with David Taylor, working with Regal, working with, and learning how to work these different body parts, learning the different, so the European style is totally different than the American style. They learned to work body parts, but they did it in different ways. So I was able to adapt that and take it with a Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson style, mix that together, and then have my amateur style. So I call it the Haas style. And that's Charlie Haas. And that's what my style of wrestling is now. So.
Oh, absolutely. And watching you in SWE, you see a whole different side of you from what you've seen back in the day. It's so refreshing to watch because, like you said, you do that where you take apart one body part and focus on that, and you're not trying to be overly flashy and stuff like that. You're taking the game to a different level again, a level that we haven't seen in forever. You're the SWA or SWE world champion. A spot like that, I think you should have been in a long time. As a singles champion, you deserve it. You are the leader of a faction called Privilege, if I'm not mistaken. So tell us what it's like, to have those kind of things different from what you had in WWE, is to stand out as a singles competitor, and to show the world what Charlie Haas is all about.
Well, so one thing is I've just taken all my experiences that I've encountered in life, and I'm able to use it, whether you call it therapy or one. I knew I was good on the mic, but here it is. I can't have someone write this down and say, okay, I can't have someone say, okay, hey, here's this piece of paper, you just say it exactly like this, and this is how you deliver it. I don't think so. Tell me where we're going, and that's what, and I'll deliver it. I got to do it in my way because, they don't, can't tell a writer to tell me how to be Charlie Haas when they don't know what I've been through. So that's not going to work. Now, and I got to apologize for this, and this will be the first time I ever apologize for it. But, I've gone to where, and it's probably a little out of line, where probably a little bit too vulgar. I was using it to catch people's attention. Like, oh shit, and I need to refrain back from that. I know the cursing and all that on TV, but it was internet TV. It is internet TV. So there really no PTC, Parent Television Committee, to where they can tell you what you can say and what you can't. But because of sponsorships, I need to cut back on that. So, and I'm a better person than that. I can still get heat without having to curse all the time. But when it comes to, I know I'm good on the mic, and because I'm being me. The storylines that we have, Kevin Sullivan, he's like, he lets me come up with the finishes. I'll run it by him. I'll say, well, okay, we know what the finish is, but this is how I want to get to it. Let's do it. Let's try it. I've had enough experience to where I've worked enough on the indies where I'll come in and people are like, hey, whatever you want to do, you just do it. So I've had that experience thanks to like Texoma Pro and a lot of different independents, like within Texas and Oklahoma, to where I've been able to put my own finishes together, old school wrestling. So to where now I'm having a chance to work with one of the best finish guys ever, Kevin Sullivan. And people understand Kevin Sullivan is when you go back and watch anything about Kevin Sullivan, he is the last link to Eddie Graham. And Eddie Graham is, if you know your history, is probably one of the greatest finishers, one of the greatest finish men ever in pro wrestling. He owned Florida Championship Wrestling at the time, back when Kevin first started. Now, Florida Championship Wrestling, they produced Dusty Rhodes, Dick Murdoch, Mike Graham, the fabulous ones, Stan Lane. I mean, Sting. I mean, you go there. Florida Championship Wrestling was huge. That's back in the territories. So now I'm learning to more back office. I'm learning how to book. I'm learning how to work backwards where, okay, we know we got our WrestleMania week coming up in Dallas, Texas. We have the Urban Convention Center for 2 days. How are we going to work backwards to get, how are we going to start building now to get to that future, and that's how people usually book week to week. Kevin Sullivan's like, you book like 6 months ahead of time. You find out here's your main event. 6 months from now, we're going to work backwards. So I'm learning how to book, and Kevin Sullivan's working with me on that. And that's something. So when I do retire from wrestling, then I can, have an office job or work or, if SW, I just want a place where my kids can go and they get a fair chance. So.
Oh, for sure. And I don't think a lot of organizations do that like that anymore, is where they're booking so far in advance. You kind of see the same matches every week on WWE. You kind of see, storylines here and there with AEW. You don't see it where it's a future. You don't see it 6 months down the road. Like, this is where it's going to be, like you did back in the day. You could kind of see like, all right, this dude's on the rise. He's going to be something big in 6 months. There's a pro wrestler in WWE. I'm sure you've heard of, Chad Gable. He was on the rise after that King of the Ring tournament. They changed his name to Shorty G right after he lost that match, which I think was the dumbest idea. What was it like when you've obviously heard the comparisons? Did you watch American Alpha? Did you see them in the ring at all?
I saw, so at the time, man, that's when I was just, man, I was really so submerged into amateur wrestling. So, okay. So like I said, we talked earlier, amateur wrestling and pro wrestling, it never really mixes because amateur wrestling, you got to go from like October or November all the way till May, the end of April. And that's your season. And pro wrestling is all year round. So when I was pro wrestling, I shut myself off to amateur wrestling. I didn't want to hear about it. I wanted nothing to do with it. Then when I started coming out of it, my kids wanted to wrestle. My brother-in-law, who was a two-time Olympian on the 80-84 Olympic team, he had a wrestling club. He's like, I want you to come in and help. I want to teach you how to coach. And learning how to coach, all over again. I knew how to amateur wrestle, but then I had to learn how to coach and break down those different techniques, to young kids. Like, I'm talking like 4 or 5 year olds. It's like watching paint dry, but you have to teach them. So I really shut off pro wrestling at that time. And I would hear, I heard that they tried to, reinvent Team Angle, or not Team Angle, World's Greatest Tag Team, and which is great, which is fine. I mean, the best form of, of appreciation, the best is flattery. Our best form of flattery would be impersonation. I guess that's how I would say it. So, I mean, which is fine. And I know, they tried to teach them a lot of the same moves that we had, and it was, I don't think I think, people want to see alpha males versus world's greatest tag team. I think that's what they wanted to see. Unfortunately, it never worked out that way. I've never really sat down and watched. I've seen one match or so. I never really followed wrestling at that time. I don't know anything if they were that great of a tag team. If they were better than us in the ring, I'd be lying to you if I said that they were or they weren't. So I wasn't a fan of pro wrestling at the time. I just wasn't, and it's nothing to do with them. It's just I wasn't a fan of it at the time.
Oh, absolutely. No, I 100% understand. I never knew if you actually watched them or got to see what they were like in the ring. With all the comparisons between you guys and American Alpha. Did you watch it when Chad was teaming with Shelton, or was that still in that time?
Shelton told me that he was tagging with them. He said, Shelton wasn't too happy about it. And I think I never even watched it at that time. I didn't want to. I haven't seen one match with them in it together. And I think Shelton knew that they were trying to replicate, they were trying to replicate us, and I don't think I don't know. I know it didn't work out, for the best, and I don't know. It's hard to catch lightning in a bottle twice. And I'm not saying that we did that, but I'm just saying Shelton and I, man, we put our heart and soul into it. And for them to say, hey, we're going to put you with this guy, Charlie, he wants you to duplicate. Dude, my heart wouldn't be in it, man. There was only one person that World's Greatest Tag Team or Team Angle belonged to, and that was Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin. And, I just can't go and duplicate that and copy that. It's not going to happen. So.
Oh, absolutely. And Charlie, like I said, I tell, I appreciate people coming on my show a lot. This has been one of the biggest honors for me. Like I said, you're a true legend in the business to somebody like me who grew up watching it when you first came into WWE. There's only one Charlie Haas, never could be duplicated. You're a true legend, man. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Hey, no problem. And thanks for having me. And man, I got so much more, and maybe we can do this again and do a part 2 or whatever. But
I love that.
And I appreciate everything, man. And and if anything want to get some of the SWE guys on here, let me know.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I would love to do that. Charlie, you want to tell them where they can find you at on social media?
Yeah. You know what? I'm brand new to social media again, but I did get my Twitter account unlocked, so that's there. So it's at Charlie Haas. Also at on Facebook at Charlie Haas, and then Instagram SWE Champ Charlie Haas, and what else do I have? Twitter, and so LinkedIn Charlie Haas, which I guess it's more for business, but it doesn't matter.
Charlie, this has been really fun, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, man. All right.
Absolutely. We can't wait to see what the future holds for Charlie Haas still to come.
Look out for the Haas Brothers 2.0, baby. They're up and coming. They'll be good.
Absolutely. Thanks, Charlie. You guys have a good one. Take care.